to that. Mark, we'll address that issue in a second as well, but on the back of it, as Mr. Sivaraman also pointed out, with this order, at least the repossession of aircraft, which was an imminent threat, as well as any possible action from the lenders, there is now a moratorium on that, so there is some breathing space available. But what can the IRP do in this situation to try and turn things around for the airline?
Good evening, Shireen, and wonderful to be with you on CNBC. This is a landmark judgment, clearly, for the IBC and NCLT court to vote in favor of to pass an order in favor of a moratorium. Clearly suggests that there's a bigger thought of not letting Go Air sink and collapse. The whole idea is to keep Go Air afloat, keep them running, keep them functioning. Because if they turn if they go belly up, then we're talking about 17,000 jobs at stake. We're talking about the government losing on GST, VAT revenue, and this being a disaster. 9% of our market share gets shaved off, and the cost of travel goes up. Now, on the order where lessors cannot take back their aircraft, now this is a bit redundant from two perspectives. The first perspective is that under the Cape Town Convention, lessors can take the aircraft whenever they want and from wherever they want. All they need to do is apply with the DGCA because they own the aircraft. But in this case, in the case of Pratt & Whitney engines that are fitted on Airbus A320 aircraft owned by lessors, how are you going to take the aircraft out of the country, Shireen, when there are no engines installed? Nearly 30 aircraft out of 56 are parked in airports across the country without engines, and guess what? There's a long waiting list. The Pratt & Whitney GTF engine problem today is not just Go Air who's alone in this. You've got Lufthansa, United Airlines, Air Baltic, Swiss Air, JetBlue, Air Nippon Airlines, Hong Kong Express. Yeah. The list is endless. And that waiting list is for 600 engines. So, lessors just need to, bite the bullet. They need to hold on, wait, and stay invested in Go Air. That is the most important point I want to raise, because this isn't about a lessor recovering his aircraft. In any case, it's going to take him 18 months to recover a single aircraft. So what do? You much rather stay invested because the court order is for 3 months. So it obviously is strategic sense. Lessors need to look at the bigger picture. There's a bigger game plan for India. And most importantly, Shireen, and I agree what Mr. Sivaraman said, Pratt & Whitney needs to be made accountable. This is a faulty engine. This engine breaks, and it's going to kill somebody someday. And this engine needs to be withdrawn from the market, repealed, and Pratt & Whitney needs to do that immediately with the FAA and EASA withdrawing the STC and type certificate.
Even as far as Pratt & Whitney is concerned, there is an arbitral award which is now being contested in a court in Delaware in the U.S., Go First filing in the U.S. against Pratt & Whitney. But Mr. Sivaraman, let's talk about what can and should happen in the next 3 months. What can the IRP do? What will it mean? We've already established very clearly that half the fleet is grounded. Could they lease more aircraft, etc.? We don't know. But what can the IRP do to ensure that this remains a viable concern?
First of all, as I have been also a finance secretary in Government of India, revenue secretary in Government of India, first of all, the ARP has to look into the financial strength of the company. Right now, I believe it has got 11,000 crores in debt. How much it owes to the bank, how much it can get by way of working capital to run the airline on a going concern basis. This must be his immediate objective, to rectify. The aircraft that are functional, that can be flown now, which are 27 aircraft on the ground, he must also evaluate whether they can be flown in a commercially viable manner. Then only he can start his operations. So he cannot do it instantly. He has to look into the financial aspect first. And secondly, he should look into the whether these 27 aircraft can be commercially viable, producing at least 1 rupee over all the expenses, so that he can run the airline. If he continues to run losses, then this 11,000 crores will also mount, and even when the Pratt & Whitney engines become available, Go Airline may not be a viable airline at that point of time, because the losses will be very huge, and they may not know how to make good the losses. That is a matter
Yes, so Mark, in order of priority, right. In order of priority, Mark, what do you believe the IRP will need to focus on? Would it also mean significant curtailing of operations, etc., at this point in time, since there is no visibility on the engine recovery and so on and so forth? What would you expect now to happen over the next few days?
Shireen, this is going to be diametrically opposing to what we've seen in the case of Jet Airways so far. The whole idea for the IRP would be to keep GoAir alive. Remember, this is a voluntary filing by GoAir before the IBC. GoAir was not taken to IBC by its lenders, by its banks, its lessors, and its whoever that's financially supported them. So this is clearly a voluntary step. So the baseline intent of the resolution practitioner and professional would be to keep the airline afloat, ensure that lessors are satisfied and taken care of, and along with that, make sure that steps are taken to restart the airline, possibly with financial assistance from banks or promoter capital. So I think from a progressive standpoint, although the big concern was India losing another operator and an airline, now increasingly that does not seem to be the case.
Yes, at least that is what it seems to be at this point in time. There is a breathing space that has been provided by this NCLT order that has come as relief for Go First, but many moving parts. It is a complicated and complex issue, and Abhilash Lal, the IRP that has been put in place, will certainly have his hands full. Mr. Sivaraman and Mark Martin, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 on the big story of the day. We will head into a break, but up next,